Private First Class. Alan Murphy stood at his post outside the Terran Alliance embassy on Proxima Centauri B. The red sun hung low in the alien sky, casting long shadows across the landing pad. Alan checked his watch. 3 hours until his shift ended. 3 hours of standing in the same spot, checking the same IDs, asking the same questions. He straightened his uniform and adjusted his cap. The colony was barely 5 years old, and tensions with the local Centaurian government remained high. His orders were simple. No one entered without proper clearance. No exceptions. Today was different, though. The embassy was preparing for a classified meeting. 3 Terran Alliance generals were coming for peace talks with the Centaurian High Command. Security protocols were at their highest level. Stay sharp. Murphy, Lieutenant Jenkins had told him during the morning briefing. The generals arrive in 4 hours. Until then, nobody gets in unless they're on the list. Alan nodded as he recalled the lieutenant's words. He took his job seriously. At 23, he wasn't the oldest or most experienced guard, but he followed rules better than most. Rules kept people safe. Rules maintained order in a chaotic universe. A shuttle appeared in the sky, its engines leaving a trail of blue exhaust as it descended toward the public landing area about half a mile from the embassy. Alan watched it land, then returned his attention to the road leading to his checkpoint. 10 minutes later, a man approached. He wore civilian clothes, a brown jacket over a plain shirt, and pants covered in the red dust that seemed to get everywhere on this planet. He had a thick beard and tired eyes. Something about the way he walked told Alan this was a military man despite the civilian clothes. ID and authorization, sir, Alan requested, standing firm at his post. The man reached into his pocket and pulled out a military identification card. Sergeant Kyle Winters, 75th Ranger Regiment, Special Operations Command. I need to speak with General Lawson immediately. Alan took the ID and scanned it with his handheld device. The screen flashed green. The ID was authentic, but that wasn't enough. Not today. He checked the clearance list on his tablet. Sergeant Kyle Winters was not on it. I'm sorry, Sergeant. You're not on the cleared personnel list for today. The embassy is under special security protocols, Alan said, handing the ID back. Winters frowned. Look, I just got back from a 6-month recon mission in the Outer Rim. I have information that General Lawson needs to see right now. Alan remained still. I understand, sir, but I cannot allow entry without proper clearance. You'll need to contact your commanding officer and get added to the list. Kid, you don't understand, Winters said, lowering his voice. I have critical intelligence about Centaurian troop movements that needs to reach command now. Lives depend on it. Alan felt a knot form in his stomach. What if the sergeant was telling the truth? What if people would die because Alan turned him away? But orders were orders, and something didn't add up. Sir, if you've just returned from a mission, why weren't you briefed on the security protocols? Why didn't your CO add you to the cleared list? Winters stepped closer. Son, I've been eating sand and dodging Centaurian patrols for half a year to get this information. I came straight here. People will die if I don't get in there. Alan didn't move. I'm sorry, sir, I cannot allow you entry without proper clearance. Please step back from the checkpoint. The sergeant's face hardened. You're making a big mistake. Do you know who I am? Rangers lead the way, kid. We don't get stopped by gate guards. Sir, step back now or I will be forced to remove you from the premises, Alan stated, his hand moving to his sidearm. Winters looked at the young guard's hand, then back at his face. For a moment, Alan thought the man might try to force his way through. Instead, Winters laughed. You've got guts, I'll give you that. He took a step back. But this isn't over. When your superiors hear about this, you'll be lucky if they let you guard a toilet on some asteroid. Alan reached for his comm unit. Security to main gate, he said calmly. What neither of them realized was that a diplomatic shuttle had silently landed on the embassy roof 10 minutes earlier. 3 figures watched the exchange on the security feed with great interest. Generals Catherine Lawson, Paul Martinez, and Richard Oakes, the highest-ranking military officials in the Terran Alliance. 2 additional security guards arrived quickly. Alan explained the situation briefly. "Escort this man off embassy grounds, please." "You're making a serious mistake," Winters said as the guards moved to either side of him. "When this is over, you'll be lucky to guard a supply closet on Europa." Alan remained steady. "Sir, I'm simply following orders. Please contact your command." Through proper channels. As Winters was escorted away, he kept looking back at Alan, his expression unreadable. Inside the embassy, General Lawson turned to her colleagues. "That's Kyle Winters," she said. "One of our best rangers. He was supposed to be deep undercover gathering intelligence on Centaurian military capabilities. And that young guard just turned him away," General Martinez noted. "Even when Winters practically told him it was a matter of life and death." General Oakes leaned forward, stroking his chin thoughtfully. "Let's see what happens next. The guard is following protocol perfectly, as he should." Alan returned to his post after logging the incident. His heart was beating faster than normal, but his face showed nothing. Had he made a career-ending mistake? Or had he just prevented a potential security breach? The sergeant's ID was real, but something about the situation felt wrong. 30 minutes passed. Alan checked every person who approached, turning away. 3 embassy staff members who had forgotten their badges. He was thorough, consistent. His comm unit buzzed. "Private Murphy, report to Conference Room Alpha immediately." Alan's stomach tightened. Conference Room Alpha was where the generals would be meeting. He had been pulled from his post to face them directly. He informed his replacement, then walked into the embassy, his steps measured and even despite his anxiety. As he entered the main building, embassy staff glanced at him with curiosity. Word traveled fast. The door to Conference Room Alpha loomed ahead. Alan took a deep breath, straightened his uniform one last time, and knocked. "Enter," came a woman's voice from inside. Alan opened the door and stepped into the room. He came face to face with not only the 3 generals but also Sergeant Winters, now in proper military uniform with all his patches and medals visible. Alan snapped to attention, preparing for the worst. "Private First Class Alan Murphy reporting." "As ordered, sir," he said, his voice steady despite the fear building inside him. "At ease, Private," General Lawson said, her stern face giving away nothing. Alan relaxed his posture slightly, his eyes briefly meeting Sergeant Winters, who now wore a surprising expression, not anger, but something that looked almost like approval. The conference room was large and cold. A long table stood in the middle with holographic displays floating above it. Maps of Proxima Centauri b rotated slowly, showing military positions and population centers. "Private Murphy," General Martinez began, "do you know why you're here?" Alan swallowed hard. "To be disciplined for turning away Sergeant Winters, sir," he answered honestly. General Oakes, an older man with silver hair and sharp eyes, chuckled. "Not exactly. What do you think of this, Sergeant Winters?" Winters stepped forward. "He did exactly what he should have done, sir." Alan blinked in confusion. This was not what he expected. "Private," General Lawson explained, leaning forward on the table. "Sergeant Winters here wasn't returning from a 6-month mission. He was conducting a security test, one that nearly every other checkpoint has failed in the past month." Alan remained silent, processing what he was hearing. "The Centaurians have been attempting to infiltrate our facilities," Martinez continued. "We've had 3 security breaches in the last 2 weeks. They're using advanced technology to create fake IDs that look real. They're also getting better at acting like humans." Alan looked at Winters with new understanding. "But sir, his ID, scanned as authentic." "Exactly," Winters said. "We've created identification that would pass every electronic check we have. The only weakness was the human part. The story I told didn't match any real operations, and I wasn't on the cleared list. You caught that when others didn't." "Which brings us to why you're here," General Oakes said, his voice deep and commanding. "We need people who can follow rules even when faced with good stories and seeming authority." Alan stood a little straighter. "I was just doing my job, sir. And that's exactly what makes you valuable, General Lawson said, especially considering what's at stake. She pressed a button on the table and the holographic display changed. Now it showed a video of what appeared to be an embassy guard letting someone through a checkpoint. The person looked human but moved with strange, jerky motions. This happened 2 weeks ago at our embassy on Mars, Lawson explained. The guard let this person in because they had what looked like proper credentials. 6 hours later, 3 staff members were dead and classified information was stolen. Alan watched the footage with growing concern. Was it a Centaurian? Yes, General Martinez confirmed. They've developed technology that allows them to look almost exactly like us. But they can't perfectly copy human behavior yet. Small things give them away. The way they walk, how they react to questions, inconsistencies in their stories. That's why we need guards who pay attention, Winters added, who follow protocol no matter what, who question things that don't seem right. He nodded at Alan. Guards like you. Alan processed this information, trying to make sense of it all. Sir, if I may ask, what happens now? The 3 generals exchanged looks. General Oakes nodded and General Lawson turned back to Alan. Now, Private Murphy, we offer you a choice, she said. You can return to your regular duties with our thanks and a commendation, or you can join a special security team we're forming. Alan stood still, waiting for more information. We're putting together a team of personnel who passed our security tests, General Martinez explained. Only 4 people out of 57 security checkpoints did what you did today. We need people who can spot these infiltrators. Alan thought about this. What exactly would this team do, sir? You would be trained to identify Centaurian infiltrators, Winters said. We've learned that they have certain tells, small behaviors that give them away. You'd learn to spot these signs and help us secure our most sensitive facilities. The work would be dangerous, General Oakes warned. The Centaurians don't want to be discovered, and you'd have to keep everything secret, even from family and friends. Alan took a deep breath. Would I be helping to protect people, sir? Yes, General Lawson said firmly. There's more at stake here than just a few embassies. The Centaurians are planning something big, something that could threaten Earth itself. Alan didn't hesitate. Then I accept, sir. General Martinez smiled. For the first time. Good, your training begins tomorrow. For now, return to your post. Act normally. Tell no one about what we've discussed here. Yes, sir, Alan replied. As he turned to leave, Sergeant Winters approached him. That was brave what you did, standing up to a ranger like that. Alan shrugged. Just following orders, sir. Keep doing that, Winters said, and you might just help save humanity. The door closed behind Alan as he left the conference room. His mind was racing with everything he had just learned. Aliens who could look like humans, a special team, a threat to Earth itself. He returned to his post outside, relieving the guard who had taken his place. The red sun of Proxima Centauri was lower now, the day moving toward evening. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same anymore. 2 hours later, his shift ended. Alan walked back to the barracks where embassy security personnel lived. His roommate, Private Steve Clark, was already there, lying on his bunk reading a message on his tablet. Hey, Murphy, Steve said, looking up. Heard you got called in to see the generals. What was that about? Alan remembered his orders. Tell no one. Just a question about an incident at the gate, he said casually. Nothing important. Steve seemed to accept this and returned to his reading. There's a message for all security personnel. We're having special training sessions starting tomorrow. Something about new ID verification procedures. Sounds boring, Alan said, trying to sound normal. Yeah, Steve agreed. Oh, and did you hear? The general's shuttle arrived early. They were already here when that ranger tried to force his way, and Alan's heart skipped a beat. How do you know about that? Steve laughed. Word travels fast. Heard you stood your ground. Good job, man. Thanks, Alan said quietly, sitting on his own bunk. In the darkness that night, Alan lay awake thinking about everything he had learned. Somewhere in the embassy, maybe even in these barracks, there could be beings that looked human, but weren't. They could be anyone. A cook, a janitor, maybe even another guard. His datapad beeped with a new message. It was brief and unspecific. 0500, Training Room 3, come alone. Alan deleted the message and set his alarm. Tomorrow would be the beginning of something new, something dangerous. He thought about his family back on Earth, his parents in Ohio, his sister in college in California. They had no idea what was happening out here, 4.2 light years from home. He would protect them. He would protect everyone, not by being a hero, but by doing what he did best, following the rules, paying attention, and trusting his instincts when something didn't seem right. As sleep finally came, Alan's last thought was of Sergeant Winters. Words, "You might just help save humanity." Alan Murphy, who had never considered himself special in any way, was now part of something much bigger than himself. All because he had done his job and turned away a man who wasn't supposed to be there. Alan woke before his alarm, his mind already alert. The digital clock read 4:30. He got up quietly, careful not to wake Steve, who slept soundly in the next bunk. Alan dressed in his uniform and slipped out of the room. The hallways of the barracks were quiet and dim. The night shift workers would be finishing soon, and the day shift hadn't started yet. Alan walked briskly, his footsteps echoing on the hard floor. Training Room 3 was in a section of the embassy he had never visited before. He had to show his ID twice to get past security checkpoints. At each one, he noticed the guards looking at him with extra attention, checking his face against his ID photo carefully. The room itself was unmarked. Just a plain door with the number 3 on it. Alan knocked once. "Enter," called a voice from inside. Alan opened the door and stepped in. The room was larger than he expected. One wall was made entirely of screens showing different parts of the embassy. Another had weapons and equipment hanging on it. In the center was a table where 3 people sat. Alan recognized Sergeant Winters immediately. Next to him was a woman, with short dark hair and the rank insignia of a lieutenant. The third person was a man with skin the color of copper and a scar across his left cheek. He wore the uniform of a corporal. "Private Murphy," Winters said, standing. "Right on time. Meet your new team." Alan stood at attention. "Sir." "At ease," Winters said. "We don't stand on ceremony here. This is Lieutenant Olivia Grant from the Diplomatic Protection Service and Corporal Ben Howard from Europa Security Forces." Alan nodded to each of them. "Nice to meet you." Lieutenant Grant gave him a small smile. "You're the one who turned away Sergeant Winters. Good job. The only one on this planet who did," Howard added with a grin. "I passed on Europa 2 weeks ago." Winters motioned for Alan to sit. "We're waiting for one more. Specialist Lisa Rodriguez from Mars. She'll be joining us via hologram until she can get here in person." As if on cue, a blue light flickered on the table and the image of a woman appeared. She looked to be in her 30s with long hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. "Sorry I'm late," she said. "Security protocols on Mars have been tightened again after another incident." Winters nodded. "Glad you could join us, Specialist. Now that we're all here, let's begin." He pressed a button and the screens on the wall changed to show images of what looked like humans. But as Alan watched, he noticed small things wrong with them. The way they held their hands, the strange angle of their heads, the too perfect posture. "These are Centaurians using what we call human suits," Winters explained. "They're getting better at mimicking us, but they still make mistakes. Your job will be to learn to spot these mistakes." Lieutenant Grant leaned forward. "The problem is we don't know how many of them are already inside our facilities. They could be anywhere. Anyone." "Even other soldiers?" Alan asked. "Especially other soldiers," Corporal Howard said grimly. "Military personnel have access to sensitive areas and information." Winters changed the screen again. Now it showed what looked like a normal human going through a security checkpoint. "This is from 2 days ago at our base on Luna. Watch carefully." Alan focused on the screen. The person showed ID, answered questions, then was allowed through. Nothing seemed unusual. I don't see anything wrong, he admitted. Most people don't, Winters said. But watch the hands. He played the footage again. This time, Alan noticed. Here, the person's fingers moved in a strange pattern, almost like they were counting something that wasn't there. That's a Centaurian tell, Lieutenant Grant explained. They have 6 fingers naturally. When they use human suits, they have to consciously remember not to use the missing finger. Sometimes they forget and make counting motions with a finger that isn't there. We've identified 15 different tells so far, Specialist Rodriguez added from her hologram. You'll learn all of them. Winters handed each of them a small device that looked like a regular tablet. These are special scanners designed to detect anomalies in human behavior. They'll help, but your own eyes and instincts are still the best tools. Alan took the device, feeling its weight. How many of them are there? The Centaurians, I mean. The room got quiet. Winters looked at the others before answering. We don't know for sure, but our best estimate is that they've placed at least 50 infiltrators in key positions across the solar system. Why? Alan asked. What do they want? Lieutenant Grant's face hardened. They want us gone. The Centaurians were here first before we started colonizing. Some of them believe humans shouldn't be allowed to expand beyond Earth. There's more, Winters said, his voice low. Show them, Rodriguez. The hologram nodded and touched something off screen. The wall display changed to show what looked like a massive construction project in space. It was hard to tell what it was, just a framework of metal and lights. 3 months ago, our long-range scanners detected this, Rodriguez explained. It's being built at the edge of the Proxima Centauri system. We believe it's a weapon. What kind of weapon? Alan asked. Staring at the image. One capable of destabilizing the gravitational field around Earth, Corporal Howard said. Basically, it could tear our home planet apart. Alan felt cold. The thought of Earth being destroyed was too big to comprehend. His family, friends, billions of people, all gone. But the peace talks, he said. The generals are here for peace negotiations. The official Centaurian government claims they know nothing about this weapon, Winters explained. They say it's being built by a radical military faction that wants war with humans, which is why we need to find the infiltrators, Lieutenant Grant added. They're providing information to the faction building the weapon. Alan looked around, the room at his new team. How do we stop them? Winters picked up a small metal case from the table and opened it. Inside were 4 badges that looked like regular military IDs but with a slight blue tint. These are your new identities, he said, handing one to Alan. As far as the world is concerned, you're all being reassigned to different posts. In reality, you'll be operating undercover looking for infiltrators within our own ranks. Alan looked at his new ID. It had his photo but a different name, Samuel Peterson. His rank had been changed to Specialist. Starting today, you're no longer Private Alan Murphy, Winters said. You're Specialist Samuel Peterson, recently transferred from Earth's moon base. Your background information has been loaded into all military databases. What about my real identity? Alan asked. Officially, Private Murphy has been reassigned to security detail on an outpost in the asteroid belt, Lieutenant Grant explained. No one will look for you there. Winters closed the briefcase. Your first mission starts in 6 hours. We've identified a possible infiltrator in the embassy's communications department. You'll be going in as new technical support staff to investigate. Alan nodded, his mind racing. Yesterday he had been a simple guard at a gate. Today he was part of a secret team trying to save Earth from destruction. Any questions? Winters asked, looking at each of them. Alan had 1,000 questions, but only one seemed important right now. How will we know if we're successful? If we stop all the infiltrators? Winters' face was grim. We probably won't get all of them, but if we can identify enough, especially the ones in key positions, we might be able to stop whatever they're planning. One more thing, Lieutenant Grant added. Trust no one outside this room. Anyone could be one of them. Anyone. As the meeting ended and they prepared to go their separate ways until the mission, Alan realized the weight of what he had taken on. The fate of Earth might depend on their success or failure, and it had all started because he had followed the rules and turned away someone who wasn't on the list. 6 hours later, Alan, now going by Sam Peterson, stood outside the communications department of the embassy. He wore a new uniform with his false rank and a badge that identified him as technical support staff. His heart beat fast, but his face remained calm. Lieutenant Grant stood beside him, also in a technical support uniform. Her name badge now read Nancy Taylor. They both carried toolboxes containing equipment for checking computer systems, but hidden inside were the special scanners Winters had given them. "Ready?" Grant asked quietly. Alan nodded. "Ready." They entered the communications department. It was a large room filled with computers, screens, and equipment that connected the embassy to Earth and other human colonies. About 20 people worked there, some in military uniforms, others in civilian clothes. A woman at the front desk looked up as they approached. Her name tag read, Diane Wilson. "Can I help you?" she asked. Grant spoke first. "Technical support. We're here to run standard checks on all systems." The woman frowned slightly. "I didn't get any notification about this new security protocol," Grant explained smoothly. "After the incidents on Mars, all communication systems are being checked without prior notice." Alan watched the woman carefully, looking for any of the tells they had learned about. Her fingers tapped on the desk, 5 fingers moving normally. Her head tilt looked natural. So far, nothing suspicious. "I'll need to check with my supervisor," Diane said, reaching for her comm unit. "Of course," Grant replied with a smile. While they waited, Alan scanned the room, taking note of all the personnel. His eyes stopped on a man in the corner. Something about the way he sat at his computer seemed odd. His posture was too straight, too still. "That's John Miller," Diane said, following Alan's gaze. "He's new. Transferred from Saturn's moon base last month." Alan nodded but kept watching Miller. The man hadn't moved at all, not even to blink, for nearly 30 seconds. A door opened, and a tall man with gray hair walked out. "I'm Frank Davis, department head. What's this about a system check?" Grant repeated their cover story while Alan continued to observe the room. He casually opened his toolbox and activated the scanner, keeping it hidden from view. The device would record subtle details about everyone in the room: body temperature, eye blink rate, small movements that might reveal non-human behavior. "All right, you can proceed," Davis said finally. "But try not to disrupt operations. We're coordinating the security for the peace talks." "We'll be quick," Grant promised. "We'll start with the auxiliary systems in the back." Davis nodded and returned to his office. Diane gave them visitor badges and pointed them to the back of the room where the main servers were kept. As they walked through the department, Alan kept the scanner running. Grant struck up casual conversations with staff members, giving the scanner time to collect data on each person. When they reached the server room, they closed the door and quickly checked the scanner's readings. "Anything?" Grant asked. Alan looked at the data. "Most readings are normal, but 2 people show unusual patterns. John Miller, the one I noticed, and—" He paused, surprised. "Frank Davis, the department head." Grant's eyes narrowed. "What kind of patterns?" "Miller's body temperature is 2 degrees below normal human range, and Davis shows unusual eye movement patterns. He blinks in a perfect rhythm exactly every 4.2 seconds. Both could be Centaurian tells," Grant confirmed. "We need to get closer to them, get better readings." They spent the next hour pretending to check different computer systems while actually gathering more data on Miller and Davis. Alan found a reason to work near Miller's station, asking him questions about his computer setup. "How long have you been here?" Alan asked casually. 4 weeks, 2 days, Miller replied, his voice oddly flat. "How do you like Proxima Centauri compared to Saturn?" Miller paused before answering, just a fraction too long. "It is adequate. The gravity is similar." Alan nodded and continued working, noting that Miller's fingers occasionally moved in that strange counting pattern they had been warned about. as if counting with a sixth finger that wasn't there. Meanwhile, Grant had found a way to inspect Davis's office computers. When she returned to the server room where Alan was waiting, her face was grim. "Davis is definitely one of them," she whispered. "I saw him take a call, and when he thought no one was looking, the skin around his neck rippled in a way human skin doesn't move." Alan showed her the scanner readings on Miller. "He's showing multiple tells too. What do we do now?" "We report back to Winters," Grant said. "We can't confront them here. We're outnumbered, and we don't know if there are more of them." As they packed up their equipment, a message came through on their secure comms. It was from Corporal Howard. "Emergency. Cover blown. Meet at extraction point immediately." Alan and Grant exchanged alarmed looks. Something had gone wrong with Howard's part of the mission. "We need to go," Grant said urgently. They hurried out of the server room. As they walked through the main communications area, Alan noticed Miller watching them intently. Too intently. "Act normal," Grant whispered. "Don't run until we're out of sight." They nodded goodbye to Diane at the front desk and walked calmly out of the department. Once in the hallway, they quickened their pace. "Extraction point is the shuttle bay on the east side," Grant said. Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout the embassy. Red lights flashed in the corridors. "Security alert. All personnel return to stations. Possible infiltration in progress," announced a voice over the speakers. "Run," Grant ordered. They sprinted down the hallway, no longer concerned about maintaining their cover. As they rounded a corner, they nearly collided with Sergeant Winters. "This way," he said urgently, leading them down a side corridor. "Howard's been captured. Rodriguez, too. The Centaurians know about our operation." "How?" Alan asked as they ran. "We have a leak," Winters replied grimly. "Someone high up is working with them." They reached a small, unmarked door. Winters punched in a code, and it slid open to reveal a narrow maintenance tunnel. "This leads to an emergency shuttle," he explained. "The generals are already aboard. We need to get them off planet before the Centaurians find them." Alan followed Winters and Grant into the tunnel. As the door closed behind them, he heard shouting from the corridor they had just left. "What about Howard and Rodriguez?" he asked. Winters' face was hard. "We'll come back for them if we can. But right now the priority is protecting the generals. If the Centaurians capture them, the peace talks fail, and Earth loses its best defense against what's coming." They reached the end of the tunnel and emerged into a small hangar, where a sleek shuttle waited, engines already running. The three generals stood at the ramp talking urgently. "What about the embassy staff?" Alan asked. "There are hundreds of innocent people here." "Most will be fine," Grant said. "The Centaurians don't want to expose themselves by hurting humans openly. They need to maintain their cover." As they approached the shuttle, General Lawson turned to them. "Sergeant Winters, report. We've confirmed at least 2 infiltrators." "In communications," Winters said. "But our team has been compromised. Howard and Rodriguez are captured." General Lawson's face darkened. "Then we have no choice. We implement Protocol Dark Star now." Alan didn't know what Protocol Dark Star was. But from the shocked expressions on Winters and Grant's faces, it wasn't good. "Sir," Winters began, "Dark Star is a last resort." "We're out of options, Sergeant," General Oakes cut in. "If the Centaurians have compromised our team, they know we're on to them. They'll accelerate their plans." General Martinez turned to Alan. "Private Murphy, or Specialist Peterson now, you've proven yourself capable. The next phase of this mission will be even more dangerous. Are you still with us?" Alan thought of Earth, of his family, of all the people who had no idea about the danger they were in. He nodded firmly. "Yes, sir. I'm still with you." "Good," General Lawson said, "because what happens in the next 24 hours will determine the fate of our entire species." The shuttle lifted off with a roar, breaking free from the embassy landing pad. Alan looked out the window as the building grew smaller below them. Somewhere down there, Howard and Rodriguez were prisoners of the Centaurians. Inside the shuttle, the 3 generals huddled around a secure communications device. General Lawson's face was grim as she spoke into it. "This is General Lawson. Authorization code Epsilon 97 Delta. Initiate protocol Dark Star. Confirmation required. A voice crackled back through the device. Authorization confirmed. Protocol Dark Star initiated. Estimated time to completion 6 hours. Winters sat down heavily next to Alan. This wasn't how it was supposed to go, he said quietly. What is Protocol Dark Star? Alan asked. Lieutenant, Grant answered from across the aisle. It's a last resort plan. If the Centaurians can't be stopped through normal channels, we hit their weapon before they can use it. Hit it with what? A concentrated antimatter strike, Winters said. Enough to destroy their weapon and anyone working on it. Alan's eyes widened. But wouldn't that start a war? General Martinez joined their conversation. The war has already started, son. The Centaurians fired the first shot when they infiltrated our facilities and built a weapon that could destroy Earth. Our attack will be surgical, General Oakes added, targeted only at their weapon platform. We'll make it clear to the Centaurian government that we're only defending ourselves. But what about Howard and Rodriguez? Alan asked. The generals exchanged looks. We'll do what we can to rescue them, General Lawson said. But the mission comes first. We cannot allow that weapon to be completed. The shuttle accelerated, pushing them back into their seats as it left the atmosphere. Through the window, Alan watched as the red-tinged sky of Proxima Centauri b gave way to the blackness of space. Where are we going? He asked. To our flagship, the Defender, Winters explained. It's been hiding on the far side of Proxima Centauri's fourth planet. From there, we'll launch the strike on the Centaurian weapon. Alan sat in silence, trying to process everything. Just 2 days ago, he had been a simple guard at a gate. Now he was involved in what could become an interstellar war. Lieutenant Grant moved to sit beside him. It's a lot to take in, she said, as if reading his thoughts. Alan nodded. I keep thinking about Howard and Rodriguez, and everyone else at the embassy. Focus on the mission, Grant advised. It's the only way to get through this. The shuttle's comm system suddenly crackled to life. Unidentified craft approaching on intercept course, warned the pilot. Everyone tensed. General Lawson rushed to the cockpit, followed by Winters. Centaurian patrol ship, the pilot reported. They're hailing us. Ignore it, General Lawson ordered. Maximum speed to the Defender. The shuttle lurched as the pilot pushed the engines to their limits. Alan gripped his seat as the G-forces increased. They're gaining on us, the pilot called out. Weapons range in 30 seconds. General Martinez turned to Alan and Grant. If they capture us, the strike on their weapon fails. Earth will be defenseless. What can we do? Alan asked. There's a smaller escape pod, General Oakes said. One of us could take the command codes and make a run for the Defender while the shuttle draws them away. I'll go, General Lawson said immediately. No, General Martinez countered. You're too valuable. We need someone who knows the codes but who the Centaurians won't immediately recognize as high command. All eyes turned to Alan. Me? He asked, surprised. You passed the test when no one else did, Winters said. You've proven you can follow protocol no matter what. And you're new, Grant added. The Centaurians won't have your biometric data in their systems yet. General Lawson made a quick decision. Private Murphy, Specialist Peterson, whatever name you go by now, you're our best hope. Alan swallowed hard but nodded. What do I need to do? Moving quickly, General Lawson pressed her hand to a scanner on the wall. A hidden panel slid open, revealing a small pod barely big enough for one person. The pod is designed for stealth, she explained. It has minimal energy signatures. The Centaurians should focus on the main shuttle. She handed Alan a small device. This contains the command codes for Protocol Dark Star. Get it to the Defender. Give it to Captain Eleanor West. She'll know what to do. The Centaurian ship is powering weapons, the pilot shouted from the cockpit. No time for questions, Winters said, helping Alan into the pod. The coordinates for the Defender are already programmed in. Grant grabbed Alan's arm. Stay alive, Murphy. We'll see you at the Defender. The pod door sealed shut. Through the small window, Alan could see the generals and Winters moving back to their seats. Grant gave him a final nod before turning away. There was a hiss of decompression, and then the pod shot away from the shuttle. Alan was pressed back into his seat by the acceleration. The pod had no pilot controls. It was entirely automated. Through the window, he saw the shuttle turn sharply, heading directly toward the approaching Centaurian ship. It was a diversion, drawing attention away from his tiny pod. A flash of light made him wince. The Centaurian ship had fired on the shuttle. Alan held his breath, watching as the shuttle performed evasive maneuvers, barely avoiding the energy beam. Then the pod's stealth systems engaged. A field of energy surrounded it, bending light around the small craft, making it nearly invisible. The stars outside blurred as the pod accelerated to its maximum speed. Alan clutched the device containing the command codes. The fate of Earth now rested in his hands. He thought of everyone on the shuttle. Winters, Grant, the generals, drawing the enemy away to give him a chance to complete the mission. For 3 hours, the pod sped through space. Alan could do nothing but wait, wondering what was happening to the shuttle and its crew. Had they escaped? Been captured? He had no way of knowing. Finally, a massive shape appeared in the distance. The Defender, humanity's most advanced warship. It hung in space like a giant knife, its hull black against the stars. The pod's communication system activated automatically. Unidentified craft. This is USS Defender. Identify yourself immediately, or be destroyed. Alan grabbed the comm unit. This is Specialist Samuel Peterson. I have an urgent message for Captain Eleanor West from General Catherine Lawson. Authorization code, Epsilon 97 Delta. There was a long pause before the reply came. Code confirmed. Prepare for emergency docking, Specialist Peterson. The pod adjusted course, heading for an opening bay door on the side of the giant ship. As it entered the docking bay, Alan saw armed soldiers waiting. The pod settled onto the deck with a gentle thud. When the door opened, Alan stepped out, hands raised to show he was no threat. I need to see Captain West immediately, he said. I have the command codes for Protocol Dark Star. A tall woman in a captain's uniform stepped forward from behind the soldiers. I'm Captain West. General Lawson sent you? Alan nodded. The generals, Sergeant Winters and Lieutenant Grant, are on a shuttle being pursued by a Centaurian ship. They sent me ahead with this. He held out the device. Captain West took it, her face grave. Follow me to the bridge. As they walked, Alan explained everything that had happened. The infiltrators, the captured team members, the emergency escape. When they reached the bridge, Captain West immediately inserted the device into a command console. Begin final countdown for Protocol Dark Star, she ordered her crew. What about the shuttle? Alan asked. Can we help them? Captain West studied a tactical display. We've detected a shuttle approaching, pursued by a Centaurian vessel. Weapons are engaged. Alan watched the display, heart pounding. The small dot representing the shuttle was moving erratically, clearly taking evasive action. Bring us between them, Captain West ordered. Prepare to fire on the Centaurian ship. The massive warship moved with surprising speed, positioning itself to shield the approaching shuttle, its weapons powered up, targeting the pursuing Centaurian vessel. Centaurian ship is breaking off, reported an officer. They're retreating. A cheer went up on the bridge. Captain West turned to Alan. Your friends will be here in 5 minutes. You did well, Specialist. You may have just saved Earth. Alan felt relief wash over him. The shuttle was safe. The mission would proceed. Earth had a chance. As he waited for the shuttle to dock, Alan thought back to where it all began. At a simple checkpoint, doing his job, following protocol. Sometimes, Captain West said, seeming to read his thoughts, the greatest heroes aren't the ones who break the rules. They're the ones who follow them, even when it would be easier not to. Alan nodded. I was just doing my job, ma'am. And because of that, she replied, we all might live to do our jobs tomorrow.